You're not lazy. You're trapped. You don't need discipline. You need trickery. Every productivity hack you've heard? Delete social media. Turn off notifications. Hustle harder. None of it solves the real reason you're stuck. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you today. Because the truth is, your brain isn't broken. You're just stuck in inertia, and until you understand how to break it, you'll keep wasting hours, days, and years watching videos like this instead of living the life you keep imagining. And what I'm about to show you didn't come from a podcast or a tweet thread. It came from years of testing, pulling myself out of cycles of guilt, self-sabotage, and aimless scrolling, and replacing them with something that finally works. Stay with me till the end, because I'm going to give you the exact protocol I use on days when I feel completely unmotivated but still need to get results. Let's break the cycle. You probably already know what you should be doing, but you're not doing it. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. You get excited about your goals, learning a skill, building a business, getting your finances together, and then nothing. Just hours lost to your phone, or YouTube, or reorganizing your folders so it feels like you're doing something. And the worst part? You start to believe this is just who you are now. That's where the trap begins. Because the longer you sit in this cycle, wanting change but never acting, the more normal it starts to feel. And over time, you convince yourself that progress should be slow, that maybe success isn't for you, that maybe you just don't have what it takes. But what if you're not lazy? What if you're just trapped in a system that was designed to keep you stuck? Most people don't realize this, but the modern world is perfectly engineered to create flatline progress. You finish school, you get your first job, and suddenly it's all repetition. Same routine, same income, same goals every new year that never go anywhere. You might get a pay raise here and there, but the lifestyle curve doesn't move much. In fact, it often gets worse. Because the more you earn, the more you spend, and suddenly, you're not just stagnant, you're stuck in debt, trading time for money just to keep up. This is what researchers at Stanford and Yale call the normalization loop. The moment you begin to see stagnation, not as a problem, but as life. It's also the same loop that keeps 58% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And that system wants you to keep believing you're the problem, so you stop looking for the exit. But you're not the problem. You're the glitch in a system designed to keep you small. And the only way out is to learn how to break motionless inertia. Not with motivation, not with more effort, but with leverage. Because once you understand how to shift it, even slightly, the entire game changes. What if the hardest part of any task wasn't finishing it, but simply starting? You've probably felt this. The second you sit down to begin something important, your brain suddenly finds 100 other things to care about. You open a tab, check a message, scroll through your notifications, and convince yourself you'll start in 5 minutes. But 5 minutes turns into an hour. And an hour turns into another day where nothing happens. We blame this on laziness or lack of discipline. But scientists at Columbia University found something different. The real block isn't effort. It's something called activation resistance. The energy cost of moving from stillness into motion. This is where the concept of inertia becomes more than just physics. Newton's first law says objects at rest stay at rest unless a force acts on them. But this isn't just about matter. It applies to behavior. When you're not moving, your brain prefers to stay not moving. Especially if the thing you're trying to do feels overwhelming. That's why telling yourself, I need to write a book, or I need to build a business, actually makes it harder to act. The moment feels too big. The stakes feel too high. So your brain resists the change. And instead, it offers you something easier, something faster, something with an instant reward. That's why you keep reaching for your phone. That's why you open YouTube without thinking. Because it delivers what your goal can't. Instant dopamine without the emotional cost of failing. But here's the twist. Your brain isn't avoiding work. It's avoiding perceived failure. A 2017 study from the University of Zurich found that the moment we associate a task with high uncertainty or potential shame, our brain starts down-regulating the motivation centers before we even begin. So the problem isn't your laziness. It's your brain trying to protect you from pain. The good news? Once you understand this, you can outsmart it. Because what you're really facing isn't lack of motivation, it's resistance from a nervous system that thinks starting equals danger. The fix isn't to try harder, it's to reduce the threat. Lower the stakes. Make the start feel safe. And that's exactly what we're going to do next. But before we get into the trick that actually changed the way I get things done, if you're finding this helpful, hit the like button. It helps the algorithm, but more importantly, it tells me to keep making content for people like you who want real change without fake hustle. Ready? Let's move to the next step. I used to think motivation was the answer. So I tried everything. Morning routines, motivational podcasts, productivity apps. They'd work for a day or two. Then I'd crash. And the worst part was the guilt. Because now it wasn't just that I wasn't doing the work. I was failing to use all the tools that were supposed to fix me. But what actually changed everything wasn't another app or a morning routine. It was a rule I found buried in a book. And honestly, I didn't think it would work. It was called the 2-minute rule. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Whatever task you're avoiding, shrink it down to something you can do in 2 minutes or less. Don't set out to clean your entire room. Just start by picking up one shirt. Don't try to write the whole essay. Just open the document and write the title. Don't commit to an hour at the gym. Just put on your shoes and walk out the door. The goal is never to finish the task. The goal is just to start. And here's why it works. That same study from Columbia on activation resistance found that once the first physical movement happens, even something as small as opening a laptop, your brain begins to release dopamine in anticipation of progress. Not after the task, before it. Which means the moment you take that first action, you change your chemistry. You turn stillness into motion, and motion creates momentum. It's like pushing a ball. The first shove takes effort. But once it rolls, it barely needs anything to keep going. That's why this isn't about tricking yourself into doing more. It's about removing the friction that's been keeping you stuck in place. Once I applied the 2-minute rule, everything changed. I started writing again. Not full chapters, just sentences. But they added up. I started organizing my finances. Not full spreadsheets, just opening my bank app for 30 seconds every morning. But that one glance made me more aware. And that awareness changed my habits. And I started moving again. Not workouts, just movement. Just something. Because the real win isn't what happens during the first 2 minutes. It's what happens after. The moment you prove to your brain that action doesn't equal pain, it lets you keep going. And over time, you're not just getting things done. You're reprogramming the entire system. So if you're overwhelmed by your goals right now, don't try to finish them. Just ask, what's the version of this task I could do in 2 minutes? That's your entry point. That's your momentum switch. And once it flips, you're no longer pushing. You're gliding. If you're still relying on willpower to get things done, you're playing the game on hard mode. Because here's the truth. Discipline fades. Motivation comes and goes. But systems? Systems don't care how you feel. I learned this the hard way. I used to think I needed to push myself harder, wake up earlier, power through the resistance. But every time I slipped, I'd spiral. One bad day became 3. One missed workout became 2 weeks. And every time, I blamed myself. Until I realized something. The most productive people I knew weren't working harder. They were just removing decisions. They weren't asking themselves, should I go to the gym today? They had their shoes next to the bed. The route was the same. The playlist was ready. They didn't debate whether to eat clean. Their fridge didn't offer any other option. And it clicked. They didn't rely on effort. They relied on defaults. That's what scientists at Duke call automaticity, the moment a repeated action becomes a default behavior that requires no conscious energy. And the key to building it? Make it frictionless. Here's how I did it. I started setting tiny anchors. Glass of water on the nightstand. Shoes by the door. To-do list already written the night before. So when I woke up, I wasn't making decisions. I was just following a sequence that was already in motion. I created what I now call lazy-proof routines. Not to optimize my life, but to remove the chance of failure when I was tired, distracted, or just not in the mood. And here's what's wild. Once I stopped trying to be the kind of person who always feels like doing the work, and started building systems for the version of me who never feels like doing the work, everything changed. Because the truth is, you don't rise to your level of motivation. You fall to the level of your systems. And the simpler they are, the harder they are to break. If you're still watching, take a second and tap the like button. If you've ever blamed yourself for not being consistent, this is your moment to stop. You don't need to be more disciplined. You just need a better setup. We're not done yet. Because everything we've done so far is about starting. But what happens after the first few wins? How do you stop yourself from falling back into the cycle? That's what we'll cover next. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they reset. They have a few good days, maybe a strong week, and then something breaks the rhythm. One misstep, one off day, and suddenly it feels like they're back at zero. But what if I told you the most powerful shift you can make is not starting stronger? It's making it impossible to reset to zero. This is where momentum becomes your ally. And momentum is not about speed. It's about direction. Think of your life right now like a staircase. Most people spend years running up the first step, then falling back down, running up again, falling down again. What we want to build is a system where even your worst days move you forward, where the floor keeps rising behind you. That's why I stopped designing routines for my best days, and I started building for my worst. What's the version of your goal that still works when you're tired? What's your fallback routine when motivation's gone? For me, I built something I now call the Lazy Day Protocol. It's not glamorous, but it works. Here's how it looks. I have a 3-minute default routine. No journaling, no planning. Just water, one stretch, and one sentence in my notes app. I have a standing, bare minimum version of every habit. Write one sentence. Open one tab. Read one paragraph. Nothing more. I have a rule. No double zeros. If I miss a day, I'm not allowed to miss the next. And that last one is everything. Because what builds momentum isn't streaks. It's recovery. What scientists at Harvard call adaptive consistency. The ability to resume a habit without emotional punishment. This rewires your identity. You go from someone who's trying to become productive to someone who always returns to motion. That's when momentum becomes permanent. And the best part? Once you stop trying to be perfect and just focus on not disappearing, you start making progress faster than ever. That's the paradox. Real growth feels boring because it's not built on highs, it's built on stability. And that's what we'll wrap with next, because everything we've covered so far has led us to this one realization. You were never the problem. The battle was never between you and laziness. It was between you and a system that rewarded distraction, punished rest, and measured success by hustle instead of progress. But now you know the truth. You don't need motivation. You don't need perfect routines. You don't need to wake up at 5 a.m. and rewrite your entire life. You just need to lower the barrier to starting, automate your defaults, and stop punishing yourself for being human. Because once you stop designing for your ideal self and start building systems for your real one, everything changes. That's the breakthrough. You're not here to force progress anymore. You're here to make it frictionless. And when you do that, when even your worst days keep the momentum alive, you stop chasing success and start building it. So if you want to keep building smarter systems instead of burning out trying harder, subscribe. This channel isn't about hustle. It's about leverage. Just ask yourself one question. What's one thing I can do for 2 minutes today that moves me forward? That's where it starts. That's how you escape the loop.